The idea of waking up in a strange location without any memories of how you got there or why is a premise that is immediately gripping. In a way, it could be seen as a smaller scale representation of humanity's place in the universe. On a rock, floating in a black abyss of an unknowable origin. It's an idea that's been explored in fiction before, notably in an episode of The Twilight Zone entitled 5 Characters in Search of an Exit, in which 5 seemingly unrelated characters ponder who trapped them there, why, and how they can escape.
We don't know where we are. Each of us woke up one moment, and here we were in the darkness.
This is known as an ontological mystery, and it's a premise developer Spike Chunsoft seems quite fond of, as it forms the basis of 2 of their franchises, Danganronpa and the Zero Escape trilogy, which we'll be focusing on in this video. 9 Hours, 9 Persons and 9 Doors, or simply 999, is the first game in this trilogy, and while it is a good game in its own right, I felt its sequel, Virtue's Last Reward, improved on its gameplay and plot. Both games have their gameplay split into 2 sections, with the story being presented in a visual novel format, and its escape sequences being point-and-click puzzles. Now, before we get into the game's story, it's important to mention that, while it's not necessary to play 999 before this one, you'll definitely get more out of the story if you have. The connections to the first game only become apparent later on in the story, and there are recaps for new players, so it's a perfectly enjoyable narrative on its own.
They're all wearing bracelets. Probably safe to assume they're trapped here too.
The story follows 9 individuals locked in an abandoned facility where they are forced to play the nunnery game. In the nunnery game, each player has a bracelet with a number on its face. The object of the game is to get this number, known as BP, to 9 or above so that they can open the number 9 door and escape. In order to earn BP, the player must participate in the Ambidex game, where a single and a pair must choose to either ally with or betray the other team. If both teams ally, they will be awarded 2 points. If they both betray, they get nothing. And if one team chooses to ally and the other chooses to betray, they will be awarded 3 points and the other team will lose 2. It sounds pretty straightforward, right? Everyone should just choose ally and they will all eventually reach 9 points and be able to escape. Well, that could happen, but it's not quite that simple.
This is really kind of an interesting game.
The Ambidex game is based on The Prisoner's Dilemma, where 2 partners in crime are caught and locked in separate, isolated rooms where they are both offered the same deal by a detective. If they sell out their partner, they will be allowed to go free, while their partner will be given a long prison sentence. There are only 3 outcomes to this. One of the criminals can take the detective's offer and benefit greatly, both criminals can remain quiet and receive a lesser prison sentence, or both criminals can betray each other and gain nothing. Now sure, it would seem like cooperating would yield the greatest benefit for both individuals, but no matter how trustworthy the other person seems, there will always be that suspicion in the back of your mind that maybe, just maybe, they'll betray, which forces you to also consider betrayal.
Yeah, what would you do?
Going back to the Ambidex game, betraying and gaining more points will allow you to escape faster. Once someone reaches 9 points and decides to open the number 9 door, it will never open again, trapping anyone left behind. And no, you can't wait for someone else with 9 points to open the door and jump through. The bracelets will kill the wearer if they attempt this, or if their BP drops below 1.
The needles in our bracelets activate. Yeah. I don't know. I swear I don't. I know somehow.
The story of Virtue's Last Reward is long and complex, but it never feels overwhelming. Depending on which choices you make, such as choosing to ally or betray, and entering escape rooms when given the choice, the game will branch off into an alternate route, shown here on the flowchart. This flowchart is one of the many improvements on 999, since it allows you to jump into any point in the story you've already previously played. You don't have to replay the entire game again and solve all the puzzles like you did in 999, and this makes it such a welcome addition. So the game has alternate routes that lead to bad endings, and there's only one right path, right?
We can't let you run around with 9 BP. I'm afraid you're going to have to sleep for a little while.
Well, yes and no. This game utilises multiple routes in a way I've never seen done before. I really can't stress how genius this system is. Now, before I proceed, I will be getting into some light spoilers ahead. Nothing too major, but these plot points won't make themselves apparent until your second playthrough or so, which is only about a quarter of the way through the game. Consider skipping to the time code on screen if you wish to go into this game completely blind. Every route you play through will have locks that are impossible to pass unless you have information from other routes. If you hit a dead end, which you will many times, you'll have to pick another route and continue playing from there. It's the age-old video game tradition of having access to information you couldn't possibly know, since in order to gain that information you had to die. Your character doesn't know this, but you do. Isn't that kind of a weird idea? How does your character, in the game's universe, know what's coming next? Games have toyed with this idea before. For example, in Dark Souls, there is no time reversal when you die. Each death your character experiences actually happened in-universe and are a stepping stone in their knowledge of the world and its hostilities. Virtues also works this concept into its narrative with its protagonist and player character, Sigma, having flashbacks to events that he was only privy to in alternate playthroughs.
Just let it go. Our time's up. This is it.
I've always loved this whenever it pops up in stories because it puts the character in exactly the same position as the player. It's almost like they're breaking the fourth wall, but in a way that makes sense within the narrative. And end of spoilers. It's also occurred to me that since there's so many different choices and routes, no two people are going to play through it in the same order, changing the nuance of some scenes and the story as a whole. Each route is also drastically different, which prevents it from becoming tedious. With that being said, there are parts you would get sick of hearing and repeating. Fortunately, there is a skip feature which allows you to skip through any text you've already read, and automatically stops when dialogue you haven't read comes up. This right here. Ingenious. This game clearly had a lot of thought put into not burning out the player from repetition, which could have easily happened. Check out the story mode of Persona 4 Arena for an example of that. You would be spending a lot of time in the same locations with the same characters, and around 20 to 30 hours in I started to feel claustrophobic, which I'm sure was intended to some extent. Speaking of the game's cast, all 9 of them have distinct and contrasting personalities. On one end of the spectrum we have the naive and overly trusting Luna.
It's nothing. I also just did what I promised to do.
And on the other we have the sly and cynical Dio.
That little shit is a hell of an actor. I'll bet you money he's a born con man.
Pretty much all the characters are interesting and mysterious in their own way, though if I had to choose favourites, they would be the calm and logical Kay, and the no-nonsense Phi.
Why are you asking me? Just hurry up and get in there.
Clover from 999 returns, and so does Alice, whose presence completely ruins the hilarity of 999's true ending, by the way. Without spoiling anything, they rewrite her backstory introduced in 999 with something nowhere near as interesting, at least in my opinion. The characters are generally more interesting this time around with the aid of voice acting in both Japanese and English, unless you're playing Rising Star's European release, which doesn't have the English dub. Japanese only, I'm afraid. You cheap, lazy bastards, Rising Star games. I played this game in English. I have the US version, and can say it's a fantastic dub with quite a few standouts. Erin Fitzgerald as Quark and Wendy Lee as Clover are the less believable performances in the cast, I felt though. The sheer volume of voice acting in this game is immense. Every line of dialogue, except for those in the escape rooms, are voiced. Oh yeah, I've been yammering on about the story for so long I almost forgot about the escape rooms. Before being able to play the Ambidex game, the player will have to solve all of the puzzles in these rooms and escape. The layout of these rooms are much better this time around with a rotating camera. It's a massive improvement over the static cameras from 999 which frequently obfuscated the room's layout. In these sections the game will switch to the point and click genre, so put your thinking cap on because it's time to solve some puzzles, son! Spike Chunsoft came up with some really cool and complex puzzles here without making them just impossible to solve. I've played point and click games before and I always have to consult a walkthrough. I suck at them. It's the truth. But the puzzles here aren't that bad at all, and I don't think it's because they're too easy. There are some that almost made my head explode, but on average they're pretty fair and well presented. I did start getting tired of them towards the end of the game though. The story is so engaging that at times they felt like brick walls stopping the story from moving forward. Personally, the escape sequences have always been my least favourite parts of these games, but if you're into that type of game, your Monkey Islands, your broken swords and what have you, then you might get more out of this game than I did. There's even some optional puzzles thrown in there too if you feel like doing the extra legwork. This is an absolutely massive game. It took me around 40 hours to complete all the routes and get the full story. For a game that's not an RPG, 40 hours is really long. Something I also like about these games is the cool stuff you learn along the way. They pull in a lot of references to other fiction and other bits of little known science and mathematics. I had no idea what Ice 9, Digital Roots or The Prisoner's Dilemma were before playing this series. This game is on both the 3DS and PS Vita. The PS Vita version playing on the PlayStation TV is what this footage is taken from, and it doesn't have the best layout. It seems like it was tailored more for the 3DS dual screen as the UI feels a little cluttered on the Vita version.
Shit is confusing.
Is it? Or is it that you're just a few carrots short of a bushel?
So Virtue's Last Reward is one of the best visual novels and point-and-click games I've ever played. Its mystery is intriguing and it does have a satisfying conclusion. Usually in these types of contrived ontological mysteries, the scenario feels like it was thought out first and the how and why second. I usually roll my eyes when they eventually do reveal the mystery because it's usually something dumb. Not here though, which is the most amazing thing about this game. They managed to make sense of every mystery in this game in a way that I found difficult to argue with. Why are we here? How? Why Why are we solving puzzles? The significance of every little detail makes sense by the end of the game. I finished this so absorbed in the story and characters that I immediately bought Zero Time Dilemma. The US version, Europe was once again screwed over, this time with no physical release. This is probably my favourite Spike Chunsoft games, and I can't rate it highly enough. If you have a PS Vita, 3DS, or a PlayStation TV, then this is an essential game to play. Now, if you excuse me, I have to finish Zero Time Dilemma and see the ending of this epic saga. This has been Snickety. I'll see you later.
Oh, you're finally done? You were taking so long.